For decades, official records showed that 796 infants and children died at a mother and baby home in Tuam, Ireland, but burial records could not account for most of them. In 2017, investigators confirmed significant quantities of juvenile remains inside underground chambers associated with a historic sewage system. Now, a full forensic excavation is recovering children, one grave at a time. Who were they? Why were so many buried without marked graves? And can modern DNA finally return their names? The investigation began not with police tape or a dramatic confession, but with public records. Local historian Catherine Corless began researching the former Tuam Mother and Baby Institution in 2010. She examined death certificates and reconstructed a list of children who had died there. Her work indicated that nearly 800 children had died while the institution was operating, but she could not find corresponding burial records for most of them. The question was painfully simple. Where had the children been buried? Corless published her research in 2012, and as journalists, campaigners, survivors, and relatives examined her findings, the absence of clear burial information became impossible to dismiss. The institution had closed decades earlier. Much of the original site had been demolished and redeveloped. Homes, roads, and a playground now occupied parts of the land. But beneath the modern neighborhood, the unanswered history remained. The issue was not merely that children had died in an era of higher infant mortality. It was that families lacked certainty about where many had been placed. A death certificate recorded that a child existed and that the child died, but without a marked grave or reliable burial entry, the final part of that life disappeared from the record. Corless's research restored something institutions had failed to preserve: a list, a count, and a question the state could no longer avoid. The Tuam institution itself operated from 1925 until 1961. It housed unmarried mothers and their children within a system that existed across 20th century Ireland. The Bon Secours sisters operated the home on behalf of Galway County Council. Women entered institutions shaped by religious judgment, social stigma, and state policy. Many had limited control over what happened to them or their children. Some children remained in institutional care. Some were boarded out, fostered, or adopted. Others became ill and died. The Irish government established the Commission of Investigation into Mother and Baby Homes in 2015 to examine institutions operating across the country. Its final report was published in January 2021. Survivors have described shame, separation, silence, and the long struggle to obtain information about their own identities and relatives. The conditions that contributed to deaths varied. Illnesses that could spread rapidly among vulnerable infants were repeatedly recorded. Poor nutrition, infection, and inadequate living conditions formed part of the broader history examined by the Commission. But the Tuam mystery was not solely about causes of death. Even when a death was registered, the burial could remain obscure. And beneath the institution's former grounds stood a structure that local residents had remembered for years. Part of the former site contained underground chambers associated with a historic sewage system. Local children reportedly encountered bones in the area decades before the national investigation. After Corless's research gained public attention, the Commission began investigating the site. Test excavations were conducted during 2016 and 2017. In March 2017, the Commission confirmed the presence of juvenile human remains in significant quantities within subsurface chambers. This was the moment speculation became verified physical evidence. The underground structure has often been described simply as a septic tank, but the full situation is more complex. Officials described subsurface chambered tanks forming part of a historic sewage system. The remains were intermixed, difficult to access, and located within confined chambers. An expert technical group warned that the site presented unusual forensic challenges: significant quantities of juvenile remains, intermixed bones, restricted access, and the need to recover evidence to a standard capable of supporting identification and any future legal investigation. The discovery did not prove that every child listed by Corless had been placed inside those chambers. The government acknowledged that the deaths of 796 children were recorded, but how many were buried in each location remained unknown. That distinction matters enormously. The chambers contain children, but other graves might exist elsewhere, and only a full excavation could begin establishing the true scale. The confirmation of human remains did not lead immediately to a full recovery. Officials first sought expert advice about what could legally, scientifically, and ethically be done. In October 2018, the Irish government decided upon a phased, forensic standard excavation, recovery, and attempted identification of the remains, followed by respectful reinterment. But existing law did not provide the necessary authority for an intervention of this scale. New legislation was required. The Institutional Burials Act was enacted in July 2022. Its purpose included enabling the recovery of remains from institutional sites where people had been buried in a manifestly inappropriate manner, allowing identification where possible and providing for respectful final arrangements. For families, every year of preparation meant another year without answers, but a rushed excavation could also destroy evidence permanently. Human remains had to be mapped precisely, soil layers had to be documented, different historical periods had to be separated carefully because the site had served as a workhouse before becoming a mother and baby institution. That meant some remains could predate 1925 entirely. In March 2023, an independent Office of the Director of Authorised Intervention, Tuam, known as the Office of the Director of Authorised Intervention, Tuam, was formally established. Its duties include recovery, scientific analysis, identification where possible, respectful burial, and memorialization. On July 14, 2025, the full forensic excavation finally began. The operation combined forensic archaeology, osteoarchaeology, engineering, historical research, and DNA science. Each section of earth had to be removed carefully, every artifact photographed and catalogued, and possible graves treated as individual cases. Then, in late 2025, investigators announced consistent evidence of a second burial area with 11 infant burials found in coffins approximately 15 meters from the memorial garden, with no visible surface markers revealing the burial ground had ever existed. That discovery changed the scale of the investigation entirely. The children were not confined only to the underground chambers already examined. The ground itself was revealing another forgotten cemetery. By February 2026, investigators reported 33 sets of infant remains from the newly confirmed burial area. By April, that figure had increased to 69. In June, it reached 77, and on July 22, 2026, investigators announced that 22 additional sets had been recovered, bringing the total number of infant remains recovered during the current excavation to 99. The latest children were found in coffins in the southwestern section of the site. They are being transferred to a dedicated mortuary and forensic facility for careful examination and analysis. The goal is not merely to count remains. Investigators will attempt to reconstruct details including age, biological profile, health, and possible cause of death, where evidence permits. Forensic Science Ireland is supporting DNA testing and matching. Eligible relatives can provide samples for comparison with DNA recovered from the children. In April 2026, the government announced its intention to expand participation to first cousins because widening the pool could improve the possibility of successful matches. A DNA match would not erase what happened, but it could give a family something previously denied: a confirmed relative, a known burial, and the ability to choose what happens next. No responsible account should promise that every child will be identified, but even partial identification could transform a number in a report into a child restored to a family history. The Tuam story sits at the intersection of church, state, local government, and social attitudes. In January 2021, the Irish Taoiseach formally apologised on behalf of the state. The Bon Secours sisters also issued an apology acknowledging that the order had failed to respect the inherent dignity of the women and children in its care. Catherine Corless began with a list because she believed every recorded death represented a person who deserved to be accounted for. More than a decade later, forensic teams are still answering the question she forced Ireland to confront. The ground is beginning to answer, but until every available area is examined and every child respectfully laid to rest, the investigation is not finished.